Office for Victims of Crime Amendments, Representative Andersen. Welcome to the committee. Will you be presenting to your substitute bill?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Do I need to say who I am for the record? I don't like. That's fine. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for this opportunity to address you today. The substitute adds wording that the Office for Victims of Crime felt would provide them better leeway to address all the victims who may be needing assistance in the cases that we're talking about. The bill that we're talking about adds bigamy to the crimes for which a victim may be awarded reparations by the Office for Victims of Crime. Specifically, the wording added to the bill says criminally injurious conduct includes a felony violation of Section 76-7-101 and other conduct leading to the psychological injury of a person resulting from living in a setting that involves a bigamous relationship. The purpose of the Utah Office for Victims of Crime is to assist victims of criminally injurious conduct who may be eligible for assistance from the Crimes Victim Reparations Fund. This fund is administered by reparations officers who work under the Crime Victims Reparation and Assistance Board. Reparations to the victims are limited to money available in the fund, and they're not an entitlement. I think it's important that we understand that. The claims may include reasonable charges incurred for products, services, and accommodations, inpatient and outpatient medical treatment, mental health counseling, and care of minor children. The awards may be limited or denied as determined by the board, and failure to grant an award does not create a cause of action against the Utah Office for Victims of Crime, the state, or any of its subdivisions. There's no right to judicial review over the decision. In order to be eligible for a reparations award, the claimant needs to be a victim of criminally injurious conduct. The conduct shall have occurred in Utah with some exceptions. Application must be made in writing. The criminally injurious conduct must be reported to law enforcement, and the claimant shall cooperate as needed with law enforcement. No arrest, prosecution, or conviction is required. The makeup of the fund is it's financed by surcharges assessed by statute on fines associated with sentences for criminal conduct. The surcharge is 90% for felonies and 35% for misdemeanors. So if an offender is fined for $1,000 for a felony conviction, then $900 of that is a surcharge, which would go to the fund and some other places that it's appropriated to. So the purpose of HB 214 is to provide help and resources to those who feel trapped in a situation that is against the law and which in so many cases is physically and emotionally harmful to them and to their loved ones. In many cases, these individuals were born or were coerced into these situations. To free themselves, these victims often leave everything they know behind and generally have zero family support. Virtually all of their resources are left behind. The data provided to me from Holding Out Help, an organization that helps women, children, and men trying to free themselves from the worst of these situations, is staggering. Of those coming to Holding Out Help from one polygamous group, 89% have no assets at all. To escape, they've left everything behind. 92% are victims of some kind of abuse. 75% are victims of sexual abuse. Most have a 6th to 8th grade educational level, and 99% suffer from PTSD. And with that concludes my presentation. I do have Gary Scheller from the Office of Victims of Crime who can help me answer questions.
We welcome Mr. Scheller to come forward and join you, and we'll bring this back to the committee for clarifying questions. Representative Waldrop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the sponsor of the bill. This is bigamy. There are other types of relationships, polygamous relationships, others. Are those included in this? Why the limitation to bigamy?
Well, bigamy because in order for, well...
Is it sort of a lesser included?
It is lesser, yeah. I mean, this is a third-degree felony. Bigamy under our statutes. There is second-degree bigamy, which would already be included under this. But in order to do that, then somebody fleeing would have to have suffered some sort of aggravating thing like sexual abuse or something to that effect. And there's a hesitancy sometimes for them to come forward and say, this is what happened to me. My husband did this or this, where under this case, they just want to be free. And so all they have to do is say, I was in a bigamous relationship and I needed to get out.
So this bill isn't creating a new cause of action for prosecution. It isn't creating any new statutory framework for any type of prosecution. It's simply addressing a reparations component of.
That's all. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We have to get out of here by 4:30. We're shutting the whole building down. Okay. Storm's coming through. Sorry.
Representative Waldrop, does that conclude your
Yes. Thank you,
questions?
Madam Chair.
I apologize.
Thank
you.
No problem.
Representative King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a quick question, Representative, about the fiscal note. It seems like if this is a significant issue and problem, which I think it is, that we should be looking at a significantly higher fiscal note than just $3,500 out of the Office of Victims of Crime. So Mr. Scheller may be able to address that. I mean, I don't have a problem with whatever the fiscal note is, but I want to understand it to a greater extent.
Sure. Thank you. Gary Scheller, the director with the Office for Victims of Crime. There was a big question that came to us when we saw the representative's bill as well. We looked back to 2012 in the court records. We could only find 8 instances where it was actually filed, the bigamy charge.
Where bigamy was prosecuted
Where bigamy
at all?
was prosecuted
Okay.
at all. Also, within the bigamy statute, there are defenses against the offense of bigamy for the abuses which are already covered. So we know this is going to be a narrow window of people. And the position of the office is that if there are some folks that we can help with this, then it makes sense to do this. So we don't anticipate a huge number of people coming through the avenue of this legislation, but if it creates an opening for us to help those that we can, we should.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Representative King. Representative Bremer.
Yes, I wanted to get some clarity on the scope of this. The language says resulting from living in a setting that involves a bigamous relationship. So if I'm reading that, and I want to make sure that you can make your legislative record on it, would this include children resulting from a bigamous relationship?
Yes, it would.
And then this would also include the first spouse in a bigamous relationship, correct?
Yeah, it would.
Okay, and then subsequent relationships as well.
Yeah, as well as the ones that we call the lost boys who are kicked out of these organizations and have nothing.
Okay.
So it would include them as well.
And that was the main thing. I just wanted to make sure that if this is ever an issue, that people can come back and look at this hearing and understand that it includes all of that and not merely spouses or persons with whom there was a sexual relationship, but it also includes children and others that were, that is a wide net for the persons living in a setting that involves a bigamous relationship.
Which is why the reason for the substitute, and that was just, then it would be more easily administered by the Office for Victims of Crime.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bremer. Representative Acton.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I like this bill. I just wonder, how would this be different from, for example, if a child runs away from his family just because he doesn't want to live with the family anymore? You know, that happens in teenage years sometimes. Would they still be able to get reparations just from...
And you could probably answer better than me, but no, because there's not. I mean, there needs to be an underlying. They need to be a victim of a crime.
Okay.
So just because I don't like, mom and dad are too strict,
Okay, but if they run away from a polygamous family, are they still the victims of just having lived in a polygamous family?
They would be able to, yes, they would be able to report it. Now again, they're going to fill out an application, and it's based on need for specific things, for mental health counseling or for
And they may
temporary
have
housing
suffered
or-
some of these other injuries
Yeah.
that you described. So I wondered about that. That
Thank
was all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Acton. Seeing no further questions, we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone in the public that wishes